Now, the Occupy Wall Street protest began 6 weeks ago. As the name suggested, the aim is to demonstrate against the gulf of inequality between the big banks and just about everyone else. They've clearly struck a chord, and not just in the US. Similar protests have now been seen in 900 cities around the world. In London, demonstrators have been camped outside St. Paul's for 9 days. Although here, there's not so much interest in the fact that the cathedral has to shut. Rather, there's more interest in the fact that the cathedral had to shut than in the actual demonstrators and their issues. So let's leave St. Paul's aside for a moment. Is this movement actually gaining traction? And where exactly will it lead? Well, I'm now joined from New York by documentary filmmaker and activist Michael Moore, who's just written another book called Here Comes Trouble. Michael Moore, great to have you on the programme. To be honest, the Occupy Wall Street protests, whether they're in London or in New York, they're not exactly the Arab Spring, are they?
Oh, it is here. The Occupy movement in the United States has spread to well over 100 cities. There are protests going on from small towns and villages to the larger cities. I just came from Occupy Wall Street an hour ago. It's so crowded down there. There's so many. It has grown each day. And I can't speak for London because I'm not there. But I can tell you here, there was a poll yesterday in the National Journal in the United States. And they asked the question, do you support the Occupy Wall Street movement? And 59% of the American public that was polled said that they support Occupy Wall Street. That's an amazing number.
It's an amazing number. I agree. But why don't we see? But why don't we see more people? But why don't we see more people then demonstrating? Because the numbers are still relatively small, aren't they?
Yeah. No, not here. They're not. There's a small town where I live in Michigan, Niles, Michigan. It's only 11,000 people live there, and they had 100 people come out in Niles. That's 1% of the population. If 1% of the United States showed up at a demonstration on the National Mall, that'd be 3 million people. No, this is really taken off, and more and more people want to be involved in it. They want to start things, and remember, this is just in its infancy. It's only 5 weeks old, so it's way too early to make any judgment on how this movement's going to go.
But I've been to a couple of these protests in Washington, in New York, but also in London. And the one thing that struck me is that these people seem to be more engaged in organising recycling workshops than actually coming up with any specific messages and demands from the people running countries.
No, it's not true. Not true. And I think, as long as the media chooses to take sort of this attitude toward, oh, it's just these young people, these hippie kids or whatever, you're really missing a huge movement that's afoot here. It's so grassroots. It's so organic. I hear of new cities every day that have where these Occupy movements have sprung up. Nobody's leading this. There's nobody. This is not organized. There's no dues to pay. People have just left the house to be part of this all over the country, and they're very clear with their demands. It's stated on the website. The greed of Wall Street that has ruined the lives of millions of people who've lost their homes, 50 million people in this country that don't have health care, 46 million that live in poverty, 40 million adults in this country cannot read and write above a 4th grade level. I mean, we have some serious problems. We have a lot of angry people, and they're sick and tired of it.
No one doubts that. But if you agree with the protesters so wholeheartedly, why didn't you join them? Why didn't you pitch your tent at Wall Street?
I'm there. I've been there a dozen times in the last 5 weeks. I'm down there quite often, and I am part of that. And I am doing my part by getting the media to focus attention, especially the mainstream media, on what's going on down there. And I attend committee meetings. I attend general assemblies. I put my 2 cents in. Listen, this is something I've been working on for over 2 decades, going after Wall Street and corporate America for what they've done to the people on this planet. And I couldn't be more happy with what I'm seeing right now.
And just very briefly, do the politicians in Washington and London ignore this at their peril?
Absolutely. Especially here in D.C. We've
got to leave it there, I'm afraid. We're out of time. Michael Moore, thank you very much indeed.